Hi, welcome to Daddy Curb's Garden. I want to show you how I started these tomato plants from cuttings. You guys know how I am with starting plants from cuttings. It's just a fun experiment. You can see back here, these were cuttings from the elderberry, and they are growing roots, and they're ready to be put out. I just haven't got it done yet. I've heard and I've read, I've seen videos, I've seen blog posts about how people do tomatoes from cuttings. I have never tried it. So this year, when I was pruning the bottom of my tomato plants, I decided to go ahead and try some and see how it worked. Well, you can see here, I got roots. So it's working. So I'll show you how I did this. It's so simple, you're going to want to do it at home. Generally, I like to try to keep the bottom of my tomato plants a little more open so there's not so many leaves laying on the ground. That can encourage some disease. I'm not always great about keeping up with it, but occasionally I do get out and get my tomatoes pruned. So this one here is really full at the base, and I want to show you how I started those others using these prunings. At the bottom of the plant, I try to keep it clear about 8 to 10 inches from the ground. So I come into my tomato plant at the base and I just start snipping off those that are growing closer to the ground. Just pulling those out. The plant has plenty of other growth, so we're not hurting it. In fact, we are encouraging, we're stimulating more growth. You do have to pay attention to which ones you're cutting. You don't want to cut things that are really tall and already growing fruit. Most likely you'll want to keep those for this season on this plant. I'm not going to take the time right now to prune this entire plant and make it pretty, but I wanted to get some of these cuttings off so I could take you back into the greenhouse and show you how I started those last ones. Hello, pumpkin. Did you find the little bed I made for you? You take your nap and then you get busy making sure there's no mice and rats in my greenhouse, alright? Alright, over in another seed tray, this is a recycled flower container that we got from one of the big box stores. I got it prepared with my coconut coir and compost and sand mixture, and we're putting it in a flat to hold some water. And this is how easy it is to start your tomatoes. You take a nice big cutting like this, and you snip some leaves off the bottom. I'm going to cut right here. I'm going to leave that node right there because that's where some roots are going to want to come out. I'm going to leave one set of leaves, so I cut above that. I'm not going to leave all the leaves. I'm going to cut some of those off, because the more leaves you have, the more energy this needs to feed all those leaves. We want a couple of leaves left on there to help feed the plant, but not so many that it draws too much energy out of the base. I chose on these plants over here to use thicker cuttings because my understanding is that they contain the most energy. They have the highest chance of survival and actually putting out roots. So I have an old drumstick. This came from the kids or a yard sale or something, but it's actually a really nice shape to start these plants. The roosters are going nuts. So right down in the middle of each of these planting containers, I'm just poking a hole, and then I'm sticking the cutting right down in the hole. What you can do is push it down to the bottom and then draw it up just a little bit, then pinch that soil. You don't want the bottom of that to be poking out of the bottom of the soil. You want it to have some soil around the base. So we're just lightly packing that down around that cutting. This cutting here, you can see some white little bumps and a lot of hairs. Those are potentially roots that wanted to come out anyway, because a tomato plant, wherever soil hits it, it will produce roots. So those little bumps and hairs, that's where roots would have started. We nipped the base of that one off. We're going to come up here and cut some of those leaves, and then we're going to cut right above that. That's one cutting. This is thick enough, I'm going to get a couple more out of it, so I'm going to cut these leaves off here. Let's get these two planted. I'm just poking that hole down in there, wiggling around so the soil doesn't fall down in the hole. Push them to the bottom, pull them up just a little bit, and then plant, and then push that soil down to hold them in place. Once all the plants are in, we're just going to make sure that this is watered in real well. And I'm pouring a little through the top, but mostly I'm going to rely on water from the bottom. I'm just going to pour it into the tray and let it wick up from the bottom. That's an easy way to take one tomato plant and turn it into potentially 100 if you had enough growth off of one plant. These I'm going to let go a little longer, get a few more roots, and then I'm going to put them out in the garden or in pots. Remember, Luke needs a new tomato plant. So I wanted to share that with you. I thought that was a fun way to propagate and get extra plants. It's free plants. Anytime you can get something free in the garden, that's a good thing. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me. I'll talk to you soon.